If you're not willing to spend $15 an hour for someone to do something that you do, that means that you are valuing your time at $15 an hour or less. You're saying that your time is only worth $15 an hour or $25 an hour. And I know the people that are listening to this podcast, that their time is worth way more than that.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Have you ever heard of velocity of money? Have you ever heard about how you can take your money, make it work for you way faster to double, triple, quadruple your wealth? That is what we talk about in today's episode. And I am Dr. Alex Schloe. I'm really excited to have my friend Kassidy Warren on the podcast, where we talk about all things such as burnout, van life, short-term rentals, boutique hotels, and this incredible concept that he has called velocity of money, which is a 4-step framework to think about. 4 different ways that you can make your money work for you faster. The 4 different ways are leverage, appreciation, free equity, and taxes. And we talk a lot about, hey, when to sell a property. A lot of us have heard the way to get rich is buy and hold real estate. And that can be true. But we talk about perhaps thinking about your return on equity. And is there a better time to sell a property and leverage those 4 ways of the velocity of money strategy? Today's episode with Kassidy was incredible. You're going to want to make sure you listen all the way through to hear about some incredible boutique hotel opportunities that he has and that he's working on at this time. It's a really great conversation, and I know you'll learn a lot from it. So if you learned something from this episode, can you subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, and share this with someone else? That is how the podcast grows, and I really appreciate it. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode with my good friend, Kassidy Warren. Kassidy Warren, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Thank you so much for your time. So excited to have you on the podcast. How are things going?
Dr. Alex, doing great.
Oh man, just call me Alex. Appreciate it. Well, awesome. Well, it was great connecting with you and Whistler at Brian Lubin's 30th. It was an awesome time. We had a lot of great conversations on the lift and off the lift, and just waiting, as you're getting the snowboard ready to go. For folks not listening, I'm a skier and I get impatient with snowboarders, but Kassidy is quick to get the bindings in and get after it. So it was a good time. But
yeah, I don't like to keep people waiting, so I try to be very quick with clipping.
Hey, it was awesome, man. It was great getting to know you, spend time with you. And I felt like a lot of our conversations that we had would translate really well to a podcast. So I'm really glad that you're here tonight, man. I really appreciate it. For folks who don't know who you are, do you mind telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Kassidy Warren, and I've been a real estate investor for essentially the last 6 years, I would say, focusing mainly on short-term rentals, Airbnbs, focusing on design, amenities, really creating experiences for people and guests. A lot of our properties are in Arizona, but we've got stuff in Washington State and the Ohio area too. And now transitioning to buying hotels, basically taking all the experience that I had in doing short-term rentals and scaling up, leveling up into boutique hotels and bigger hotel projects. And previously, so relatable to your audience, I think I was a career corporate guy. I was an engineer for a long time. I worked in IT. I was a manager and ultimately got really burned out on all of that. And I felt the calling to go do something else and be an entrepreneur. And so my wife and I, back in 2018, quit our jobs and we lived in our van for about 6 months. And so we traveled around, did all that. And I am really passionate about hospitality and guest experience. And we had done a little bit of Airbnb where we were renting our spare bedroom out on Airbnb. This is like 2015 days. And so we had kind of learned everything we needed to know and use that experience to then go actually start buying houses, and basically spent 5 years buying 2 houses every year, furnishing, designing, construction, all that. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Folks can definitely relate to the burnout of the W-2 and trying to escape that rat race, especially in medicine. Unfortunately, burnout's really quite high as well. What was it like? What was it like quitting the job, having the courage to quit the job, and then do van life? And what was van life like for you?
Great question. I had always wanted to climb the corporate ladder. That was just like what was ingrained in me. I grew up in sort of like a middle-class household. We were very frugal, very, very frugal. We weren't poor. We weren't, which was almost kind of weird. It was like, I knew that we had the money, but we didn't spend any of it on like anything. Didn't have experiences, but it was always like go to school, get good grades. I played sports year round, go to college and get a job. Like that was the plan. Right. And I went into engineering because I loved that type of work. I loved building things, building big things. And so what ended up happening is I started moving to management and I started like trying to grow because I was trying to climb the ladder, just like I thought I was supposed to. And then I got to a point where I saw how decisions were being made about people and about projects and about things that I was really passionate about. And I saw the leaders and executives above me and their lives and how much time they were spending still on the phone, still doing meetings. And I was doing a lot of like emergency response type stuff, not like your emergencies. It was power outages and like storm response. So it was late nights and long weekends all through basically October to April. And I wasn't really seeing anything getting better in terms of my life, the quality of my, or the things that I wanted to do. And I love travel. My wife loved travel. We maximize travel. We maximize the weekends, but a lot of that contributed to the burnout. A lot of like, so basically we would work 40, 50, 60 hours a week on these big projects. And I was in management now, and that wasn't as fun as being an engineer and building things. And so that was contributing to the burnout. And then you would try to cram as much into the weekends, hike or ski or, get an adventure in, but then you're driving and adventuring and coming back and cleaning all your gear and you're just jumping right into it on that Monday. And so there was a ton of burnout on both ends. And so what was happening is I was realizing that I didn't know what I even wanted next. I didn't even have the time to think about what I wanted next. And that's where the conversation started coming up. Well, we got to do something about this. We got to take a break, even just to get some rest. And so we both decided, my wife and I said, well, we have this van, let's go live in the van. And that was like peak van life was going on at the time. Like hashtag van life on Instagram was in full effect. We were part of it. And so once I made that decision, it was like full steam ahead, 100% clarity, 100% focus. This is what I'm doing. And I think it took about 12 to 16 months to save up enough money where we felt comfortable. And going in to quit my job was actually easy because I knew it's what I wanted, right? And I knew that they were going to be fine without me. And leading up to that point, I had actually done a lot to set up the team to run without me. I had brought some people in, I had done some things, I'd handed some stuff off. So it was like, they were going to be fine without me. And then van life was supposed to be great, but we had a lot of mechanical troubles. But the purpose of the whole thing was we needed space to think and dream. And actually, it was like the second day of van life where we were driving through Yellowstone. We had just left my wife's family's house and we were driving through Yellowstone. And I looked at my wife and I said, well, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And she's like, I want to invest in real estate. I want to own Airbnbs all over the country. And I was like, okay, me too. Let's do this. But then we proceeded to continue with van life and break down multiple times. And we ended up spending quite a bit of time down in Tucson, broken down. And that's where we ended up buying a lot of our properties because we fell in love with Tucson. And if anyone is listening from the Phoenix area, they're wondering why would we love Tucson? But the outdoors, the mountain biking, the hiking, the tacos, the architecture down there is something that we really fell in love with. And so from that point on, we spent 6 months and then we said, okay, we're done. We can't deal with all the mechanical trouble anymore. But we had a goal and a vision and a focus. And again, like 100% clarity, 100% belief in buying these properties. And so that meant I had to go back to work. But I went back as a contractor. I went back and I thought I was an entrepreneur by doing this, but really I was just like, I was still trading time for money, but it was more money and I had flexible hours, flexible schedule, remote working. This is even before COVID. And so that allowed us to invest in all these properties and buy 2 houses every year. It was unbelievable what we were doing in our own minds. And so we had this drive and this like insatiable appetite to go just buy real estate and improve real estate. We were living like our HGTV dreams, like we were building and designing these incredible properties. And at our last project, we ended up putting a pool in and a hot tub and like adding on square footage and adding bathrooms. Like every property got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more expensive because we were learning about tax benefits and, all this stuff. So van life really, when we look back, it was the catalyst for everything because it gave us the space to think and figure out what we wanted to do. And then it was so painful that it forced us to go back to work, to go achieve our dreams. And it put us into Tucson, which is where we ended up buying a lot of our properties. And that's worked out really well
awesome,
for us.
Man. Yeah, I think a few things that I wanted to hit on that you mentioned. One, you set up your team to work without you, which is super important in business and in real estate as folks are getting further into investing, realizing that they're trading time for money. And that's the same thing in your real estate business. And you have to figure out, hey, how can you put that team in place so you can buy back some more of your time? And I'm sure we'll hit on that. I know you're a huge fan of Dan Martell as well as I am. And the book, Buy Back Your Time, is absolutely incredible. But the other thing too is that a lot of times finding that space to have that clarity is hard to do. Like you were definitely assisted by the van life and by the times that we were in with COVID. But I think a lot of us don't understand how important it is to make that time, even if that time is just a weekend where you like go to a cabin, like you and your partner, and you just spend time talking and figuring out what's next. Like even just that alone is super powerful. And Steph and I, we try every quarter, but it really ends up being about every 6 months of like just really having some dedicated time to tag up and be like, okay, how are you? How are you doing? Are we meeting our goals as parents? Are we meeting our goals as spouses? Are we meeting our goals in business? Work for me. And it's been really important for us to do that as we grow in our relationship. And so I think folks that are listening to this, they may be like, well, I'm a busy doctor. I don't have time to go live in a van for 6 months, but maybe you do have time to just get away for a weekend and really spend that time focusing on what you want.
Yeah, we are implementing what we're calling quarterly clarity retreats with just my wife and I. Not at home, not at any of the properties, somewhere different, in the woods, preferably, limited cell service, or, none. It's getting harder nowadays, but to do exactly what you just described, because you have to look back and you have to look forward and you have to readjust and you have to have no distractions. If I could give one piece of advice to anybody that's listening, whether you're a physician or you have a W-2 job or you're an entrepreneur, is subtract more from your life than you think you can. Subtract as much as you can out of your life that doesn't align with your energy and like what you're trying to do. And this is Dan, this is Buy Back Your Time. And this is actually what Dan talks about, is protecting your energy. Your success is like, you'll be more successful if you focus on only doing the things that actually light you up and that you actually enjoy. I met a physician, he was a dentist in Wisconsin who had I think he has 10 practices, and he started as a regular dentist, but he systematized everything where he would just have to come in and basically he had people for every single piece that were really excellent in training and all this. And he would just come in and do what he needed to do for his specific part. And I think actually Dan talks about that in the Buy Back Your Time book. But the more that you can subtract, especially the things that you don't enjoy doing, and then create space without distractions. That was a big change in my life, was when I started implementing weekly things that were just for me and without distractions. So every week I go and there's a sauna, cold plunge, and steam room. There's a specific place that I go to, or when I'm traveling, I go find whatever's nearby, and I don't have my device, and it's an hour or more of me, just no distractions. Something happens with the sauna and the steam room and the cold plunge where it gets your mind going, it gets things flowing, and you have ideas and you have inspiration, and maybe you just have just alone time and quiet time. And I think we all need that.
Yeah, it's so important to have that time to recharge and just think and think deeply, and all the distractions distract us from doing that. And yeah, it's something I'm trying to work on too. And I feel like I've been making slow progress in that. I just hired an admin assistant about a week and a half ago, and just having someone that just goes through my email and prioritizes what's important. I'm using the email GPS from Buy Back Your Time. Yeah, I mean, that book's incredible. Just waking up and doing, having my quiet time and going to the gym and getting ready for clinic, and then be like, hey, I don't even need to check my email because she already texted me and said hey, these are the 2 things that were actually important out of the 100 emails that you got. You know what I mean? And so just that little bit makes me so much happier, frees up my time. It's just something that I don't like to do, and I don't need to waste my energy looking through a bunch of emails or newsletters or, hey, this person messaged you on LinkedIn. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I hired my EA about 2 months ago, and it's been absolutely life-changing. I have been so focused on only the things that I enjoy doing and only the things that are building up my business and the things that I am prioritizing. Being in your email is. But once I hired her, I let go. She's been in it. I'm never in my email. She texts me, or we have the email GPS system. She reminds me when there's something important. She'll just shoot me a text. It's she's 10 steps ahead of me, and she coordinates all my travel. I don't have to pick which flight I want or which car, or she takes care of everything. She also, I'm doing a lot of weightlifting and I'm on a specific meal plan. She will order groceries delivered to my hotel or my Airbnb ahead of time when I arrive, so that I have all the food that I need. Right. There's all these things. It's like once the door opens up to like what's possible, instead of just loading your shoulders and loading and loading and loading, and like you get to this point where you can't do anymore and you're doing things that you don't enjoy. The hard part is then creating the time and the space for yourself and then doing the work, the little bit of extra work that it's going to take to bring someone on and then offload and train those people. But honestly, it's been the best thing that I've ever done.
It's so worth it too. And I think a lot of folks listening to this are probably like, well, I don't want to spend X amount of dollars to hire someone. And there's a wide range of prices in which you can pay someone to like help be your admin assistant. It's not that expensive. And if you look at, hey, how much money you make as a doctor hourly and you figure out how much time you're wasting every day checking your email and doing some of these little tasks that you shouldn't be doing, it's mind-boggling. And it's crazy to think about. And so it's worth it.
Yeah, if you're not willing to spend $15 an hour for someone to do something that you do, that means that you are valuing your time at $15 an hour or less. You're saying that your time is only worth $15 an hour or $25 an hour. And I know the people that are listening to this podcast that their time is worth way, way, way more than that. And so you can afford to pay people, and it's more about how you feel. And then what's your main goal? What do you so if you're saving lives, do you want to save more lives? Like, I don't know, like getting the admin stuff or anything that's not what you're good at or what lights you up or what is the most beneficial to society. Like you are wasting time and energy and effort on stuff that's not achieving your goal, that's not helping people, that's not saving people's lives. If you want to go discover a new way of doing a certain procedure that's going to help people, why would you want to spend it managing email and calendar and coordinating travel appointments? Like, go use your brain and your skills and your gifts to go do things to help people. And that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, man.
So I believe in it. I'm a huge believer.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely opened my mind to the fact of like, hey, I need to think about this differently. And every hour is wasted that I'm doing a task that I could offset to somebody else for cheaper than what my hourly rate would be. And it doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm hiring an assistant so that I can, spend all that time working on real estate deals or buying more residential assisted living or whatever that may be. But that's also another hour, 2 hours that I get to spend with Jack and Owen, or get to spend with my wife, or go do something that I really want to do. Because those hobbies, as we talked about before, are so important to do the things that you love and have that time to think about what's next. And so, it's a game changer. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And this person that you bring on is probably better at doing all the stuff than you are.
And she likes it.
Right. It's like, yeah. And they like it. Yeah. You can find people that like doing this stuff. That's the golden goose right there, is if you find the 10 things that you hate doing and you find someone that loves doing those 10 things, that's like an insane combination of like, you will feel better. They will feel better. They'll do more. They'll enjoy their work. You'll enjoy spending time with your kids. I think that's really one of the biggest missed opportunities, is like spending more time with our family and our loved ones just by simply buying back some of our time.
Yeah, I agree. It's easy, especially in entrepreneurial ventures, to build another job and think or say like, oh, I'm doing this for my family, or like down the road, it's not going to be as busy. It's always going to be busy, or if not busier, especially if you're growing. So you have to figure out how to put those pieces in place to make it where you can continue to scale and prioritize the things that matter most.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Well, let's talk about, Kassidy. So we bought back some time, but now let's talk about velocity of money. So this is something that you and I talked about that was a really cool way of thinking about how you can use your money to work for you and work for you more efficiently in a more timely manner. So let's talk a bit about velocity of money. What does that mean to you, velocity of money?
Yeah, it's essentially the framework that I've come up with to describe the best way to multiply your money through real estate. And this is for anybody. This is for anybody that's either actively investing in real estate, or maybe they're passive or want to be passive or somewhat active, like maybe some of the people that are listening to this podcast right now. And so I want to sort of dispel this buy and hold myth a little bit too. So this is kind of the anti-buy and hold. And I think it's basically figured out how to get the best of all worlds within real estate, how to get all the benefits and make the most money in the quickest amount of time. This is the strategy, velocity of money. And there's 4 accelerators to the velocity of money. And so the first one is leverage. This is true across any real estate. You use leverage to buy real estate. I do know people that want to buy cash and pay cash for real estate, but that's actually not the way that you make the most amount of money. Real estate is a poor investment if you're using 100% cash to buy and hold a piece of real estate. And so leverage is debt on the real estate. And so you get to buy the entire asset for a fraction of the price, right? And so actually the least amount of money that you can use to buy that technically is better. Right now, you need a cash flow. You need to cover the debt payment and the expenses, right? That's the caveat, is we do need a cash flow, but we don't always need to cash flow a ton. Like, it's not about the cash flow. So there's the leverage piece where you get the entire asset for a fraction of the price. Then the second accelerator in the velocity of money is appreciation, and specifically forced appreciation. So regular appreciation is just year over year, the property goes up 3% because of market conditions, or maybe it goes up a little bit more because a new company came in to the area, more people moved to the area, COVID boom, whatever it is. And so you get a little bit more just normal appreciation, but that's not really in your control. You might have bought in a really good neighborhood or in a good area, or you syndicated with somebody that knew what they were doing. But forced appreciation is the golden ticket when you go and make improvements to the property. So for a house, this is adding square footage, renovating the kitchen, bathrooms, adding a pool and hot tub if it makes sense, and really increasing the overall value of the property. That's forced appreciation. It's not as powerful on residential. On commercial is where it's really powerful. So think boutique hotels, storage, even multifamily, this is true. And so the formula, the way that you do this is you come in, if it's a hotel, and you improve the rooms, you make it look nice, you add amenities, maybe you're adding a sauna, hot tub, where one didn't exist before, and you're improving operations. And so you're increasing the value of the property, but the way that that's done is actually by increasing the profit of the property. And so technically it's called the NOI, net operating income, but let's think about it as profits. And so if you come in and you make a ton of renovations, you take better pictures of the hotel, you run it better, you reduce expenses. We will also convert like a manager's unit where managers used to live on site or something, they live on site. And so if we don't need them to live on site anymore, we can convert that unit to one or two more hotel rooms. And so what that does is, as you increase the profits of the hotel, of the property, you actually increase the overall value of the property, but not one for one, like 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 or 1 to 15, depending on, it's called the cap rate, depending on the cap rate. And so what that looks like is, let's say I converted that manager's unit and I net $50K more per year. That means that the value of the property goes up by $500,000. And on that specific one, by converting the manager's unit, that means there's not a lot of additional expenses that we've added. That's a really slick way on the hotel side to do that. And so we increased annual profits by $50K, and the value of the property went up by $500,000. And because when people go buy commercial real estate, they buy it based on how much cash flow they're getting on the deal. If they want a turnkey thing, how much money am I going to get paid every year for how much I'm spending? And then when you go look at on the residential side, let's say we did an Airbnb and we bought a $400,000 house in a $500,000 neighborhood. So the comps are 500. We put some money into the $400,000 house and now it's worth 500 grand. But let's say we're making $1 million in cash flow, unrealistic, but we're making so much money in cash flow, but we go to sell it. Well, the property's still only worth 500 grand because of the comps and the way it's appraised and the market and the people that buy it. It's not worth anymore just because it's making a ton of money. Now, in that extreme example, maybe it is,
Yeah.
But in reality, it's not.
Yeah, that's the power of commercial.
Exactly. And then the other thing to note, when you combine leverage with forced appreciation, because you only paid a fraction of the price, let's say on this particular example, it's $1 million hotel and you put 10% down. So you put 100 grand down and we doubled the value in the end. And so that property just gained $1 million in value, but you only put 100 grand down. That means you got $1 million on your 100 grand. That's the power of leverage. If you would have paid cash, you would have put $1 million down. Okay, you would have made $1 million, but on $1 million. With leverage, you put 10% down and you got the entire value of the appreciation, the forced appreciation on your down payment. So that's why the VA loans are so powerful too, is because zero down and you get all that forced appreciation.
The physician loan too is also no money down. So if folks are listening to this, you can do that as well. Leverage a physician loan to get in with no money down. And if you're a military physician, do both, which is awesome.
Yes. Yeah. And so then the last two accelerators on the velocity of money. So those are really very powerful, and why commercial real estate is so powerful and a good investment. The third one is equity. And I like to call it free equity, Because if you buy a property, you're going to have equity, but free equity is your ability to raise money and get additional equity or add a skill set to a property. So if you're really good at renovating, or if you're a really good operator, or maybe you're bringing a lot of money to the table, maybe you've got a big chunk of capital, and that means that you will get additional equity. So you don't have to put in dollar for dollar to get the same amount of equity. You'll get more equity. And so that's what I call free equity. And that's how wealth is built, is by, if you can come to a deal and provide a really valuable skill set, and it could be just additional money or capital raising, you're going to get extra equity by not having to put any of your own money in. And so that's how people get really wealthy, is by getting free equity. And that's more available on the commercial side too. There are people raising money on residential deals. It's just not as strong. It's just, there's not as much money in it. So that's another big one. The fourth one, it took me, I think I got lucky. It took me until after my first deal to learn this one. So in my first year of really investing in real estate was the tax benefits. So for your listeners, they're probably familiar with 401ks and probably self-directed IRAs and SEP, probably the SEP stuff too. Like there's different retirement vehicles that there are quote unquote tax benefits by doing that. Basically, you can put pre-tax in, you get tax deferred. It comes out of your paycheck or however you're putting it in. You never see it. And then it goes into a retirement account. But when you withdraw on your retirement account, you get taxed as income. So it's only tax deferred, and it's only partial. It's not a huge tax benefit, but we're led to believe that it's really the one major lever that us regular folk that are working jobs or running businesses that we can do. In real estate, there are a lot more tax benefits and heavier hitting tax benefits. So the first and the biggest one is cost segregation and depreciation. And this one's a hard one to understand until you see it happen, where I buy a property. This property's cash flowing. I'm making money every month. And then let's say I had a side business. I'm a physician, but I bought an Airbnb. And so now I just bought an Airbnb and I'm making cash flow. And then I do a cost segregation study and I get depreciation, and I actually get a huge write-off. And maybe I even get a refund from the government for buying real estate investment property. And so this is what's called a paper loss. And so I'm not going to go into details because it gets kind of confusing, but essentially you can pay zero income tax. And if you've already paid tax through your regular job, you can get a refund. And then you can do that. And so this is the short-term rental loophole, but also on commercial real estate, it's available too. And so if you're a physician or if you're someone with a W-2 job, you can go buy an Airbnb and you can essentially eliminate your tax bill. And so I was talking to the same dentist, and he was like, I would have to buy so many properties. He was like, I make so much money. And he wasn't bragging, but he was like, this wouldn't work for me. I was like, no, you just need to go buy and you're going to get about $500,000 in write-off in the first year. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. I was like, yeah, like the only way for people with a regular job or working like a small business for them to really save on their taxes without just having to buy cars or spend more money is you go buy a really expensive short-term rental. You get it set up, and then you get a cost segregation study and take the depreciation. And so remember that. If anyone's listening, clip this part, go talk to your CPA and be like, what is he talking about? And go find a CPA that knows what I'm talking about and make sure that you go do this strategy. Go buy a short-term rental and pay zero in taxes. So that is basically the velocity of money strategy. There's some other tax benefits like a 1031 exchange. But the other piece of this that I want to talk about is when to sell, because I talked about anti-buy and hold, right? But we've all been led to believe you get rich from holding onto the real estate forever. But if you actually look at the principal pay down portion, so when you own real estate, and so when you look at your property, if you own a property right now, you should look at how much equity you have. So how much equity, if you sold it, how much money would you end up with? And so as an example, our house that we're selling in Cleveland, it's worth $450K. We're going to walk away with $200,000 after all fees and everything. And that's about 6 to 7 years of cash flow. And so this is what I tell people is if you look at how much cash flow you're making every year and compare it to how much equity you have, if you can sell and get 5, 6, 7 years or more of cash flow, you want to do that. That's accelerating your wealth. You're pulling all that money forward. And then what you do everything I just said, because your tax benefits run out after about year 5 and you have leverage. So I'm going to take that $200,000. I'm going to put it into a hotel, but let's say I put it into a house. That $200,000 can buy me $1 million house, and I can turn it into an Airbnb. I can do all the tax benefits, and then I can force appreciation. And now I've like tripled my money in no time. And so I had a $450,000 house in Cleveland. And now I can go buy $1 million house and I can cash flow and I can appreciate, like start that cycle all over again. And so every 3 to 5 years, you should be doing this. And this is how you triple your money every 3 to 5 years is through the velocity of money strategy. And it's by selling, not just refinancing or buying.
That's amazing, Kassidy. Yeah, I'm sitting here right now thinking about a house we have in Florida that's got about 200,000 in equity, and it's making my wheels spin. Of like, hey, maybe a good play for us would be selling that, taking that 200,000. It's a long-term rental. Cash flow is about $24,000 or so a year. Yeah, so eight years. Yeah,
it's like 9 years.
Yeah,
like 8 or 9 years. Yeah, 8 years of cash flow.
And then we could potentially put that into a short-term rental, and then do cost segregation study, accelerate the depreciation right off my W-2 income. And yeah, you're right. It's crazy. Yep. That 200,000 could then generate, who knows, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 in wealth in no time.
That's exactly right. Because when you add up the leverage piece, the forced depreciation, the cash flow, the biggest hit usually is actually on the forced depreciation and not on the cash flow. And so if you can take that 200 and then when you buy, so you're going to take that 200 grand, you're going to buy $1 million house. The amount of money that you put into the $1 million house is worth a lot more than the money that you put into the $400,000 house, because it's in a more expensive neighborhood. It's in a better area. It's a bigger asset. It should need the same amount of work, but basically every dollar that you put in to improve the property should get you $3 out. That's what I like to say. But if you're buying, multiple $300,000 houses in lower cost of living areas, the money that you spend to renovate and rehab is not going to go as far. It's not going to make you as much money. And so actually focusing on bigger, more expensive, better, higher cost of living areas and improving that one thing and using that leverage is going to generate you a lot more wealth.
Yeah, that's wild, man. And we were talking about it on the trip, how buying that $1 million property is also going to, appreciate way more over time than that $400,000 property is going to do as well. So you're just increasing the amount of money or equity because of the appreciation that's happening. So just makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I like to ask people, because a lot of people like to work in percentages. And so I'm like, okay, well, do you want 20% on 300 grand, which is usually the cash on cash return of an Airbnb in a Midwest market? You can buy a $300,000 house and you get about a 20% cash on cash return. Do you want 20% on 300,000 or do you want 5% on 2 million? So even if you don't make a ton of cash flow, or even if your percentages are smaller, but you're able to leverage that money up into a $2 million asset, you're going to make way more because you're appreciating and you're forcing appreciation on a higher cost asset. You still have to buy a good deal. You can't just go buy any expensive mansion. Like, you still have to buy something that needs work. It needs to have the real estate fundamentals. But a lot of your listeners, the other thing is, because you guys have even if you bought something that didn't cash flow, but you covered 75% or 50% of the mortgage, like, do the math. You're going to make way more money on the appreciation than you are on the cash flow. And and then you get all the tax benefits. So your physicians, your listeners will save way more by doing a cost segregation study and getting the tax benefits. And appreciation and cash flow should be the last thing that they worry about, because they have a really high paying cash flowing job right now.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. The only way I would say the counter to that would be like, well, if you need cash flow to get out of your job, maybe this isn't a strategy for you. Yeah. But if you're like, hey, I really like my job, I really like my W-2, and I'm looking to build wealth, like, this is an incredible way to do it. And really expedite that velocity of money, which is massive. Yeah, my wheels are spinning, Kassidy, because I've always thought about it in terms of cash flow, like, oh, I just need cash flow. But a lot of physicians don't, and maybe you want some cash flow and you want some appreciation, and that's great too. You can certainly do that, but this strategy would add a lot of wealth. And then you could leverage this strategy down the road to maybe buy a higher cash flowing asset in the future, such as a hotel. And I want to segue to the hotel because I want to be respectful of your time. I know you are doing big things in boutique hotels, and I think boutique hotels are absolutely amazing. I think realistically, the best real estate assets right now in this market are residential assisted living, because I'm biased. Boutique hotels and mobile home parks probably are like the best, and industrial is probably a great asset class as well. But I think those are the best asset classes right now that really work on the fundamentals of what you're talking about. They're also high cash flow and high appreciation. And, for assisted living and for boutique hotels, it's this like beautiful blend of real estate and business, and for you, hospitality as well. So what do you like about boutique hotels? What have you done in boutique hotels, and what's coming next? Because you got some really exciting things in the pipeline.
Yeah, I love boutique hotels because I do love hospitality. I love design. I love working with creative people. And so I shied away from multifamily, right? The numbers didn't make sense for me. And it's just, the renovations on a big apartment unit and white cabinets and gray floors just didn't pique my interest. But the reason I like boutique hotels and just hotels in general, especially right now, is when you look in the price range of like $2 to $12 million at any market in the US. And I like to look in typically coastal. I'm more on the West Coast, and that's sort of what I know. Montana down to New Mexico and then west is what I look for. And anything near a body of water, typically a established vacation destination, whether it's a primary or secondary market, near a body of water, mountains, national park, right? Not necessarily in the middle of nowhere with nothing else around. And what you're seeing is that you're seeing a lot of regulations on Airbnbs. And when that happens, when Airbnbs start getting banned, well, people only can book hotels. But people still want the Airbnb experience. They don't want just another hotel all the time. There's still going to be people that go to those, but you can Airbnbify boutique hotels, or essentially design and renovate and add amenities to these hotels. And in the 2 to 12 million price range, what you find is that the small investors, the individuals, they can't afford that. It's hard for them to buy in that price range. So they're not competing with you. And then you have the institutional investors above that, like the hedge funds, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards. They don't want to come and pay for something that's less than $12 million. And there's some other things too. And so there's this wedge market right now where you can find these, and it's typically baby boomers that bought this as their retirement plan years ago. And so there's a lot of baby boomers that are out there that want to get these off of their hands, or their kids want to get rid of them because they either passed away or they've handed it down to the kids, and the kids want nothing to do with it. They never wanted to own it in the first place. They've been neglected. Not the kids, the property has been neglected. Deferred maintenance, hasn't had any amenities. They don't have a website. They're not on all of the online booking platforms. They don't have an electronic property management system. There's no automated messaging. There's no electronic door locks. There's no, all this stuff that we know today to be able to do. And so what we can do is with these baby boomers is we can do seller finance with them, because they probably bought their property on seller finance. A lot of them did when they originally bought. And so they're familiar with this. And so we're able to negotiate terms that are beneficial to both us and the seller. Like I said, some of them have the manager's unit, so we can come in and flip the manager's unit. And we can come in and operate these things better. And basically what we're seeing and what we're doing is we're buying them at a discount on seller finance, rehab within 6 to 18 weeks. Depending on the size, and remarketing, reopening, and really trying to focus on guest experience. And we're doubling and tripling the value of the property by doing that. And so bought one in Solvang, California, closed back in April. We opted to run it through busy season because we knew that the permitting process was going to be tough and take a long time, which it did. And so we ran it through busy season. And then we are just about to start renovations here in like 2 weeks. Completely redo the outside. It's 24 units. It's a little Danish town. It's like the original motel. I wouldn't even call it a motel though, because it's a hotel. And we're going to do exactly everything that I just said. And the differentiator for that hotel is that there's 2 really great outdoor spaces. We're going to really focus on making them a curated, private, but also like communal outdoor space. So a separate fire pit areas, the vegetation, there's going to be pet areas off in the back. We're going to be pet friendly and design focus in all the rooms. So we raised money for that. We brought investors in. They're going to get all the benefits of the velocity of money that I just talked about. And we're going to have fun renovating this thing. And then I'm under contract on another one up in Washington State, 31 units. Yeah, 31 units. That one is an eviction, or a foreclosure. So we're just kind of waiting on that process to complete before we can start actually, doing anything on that one. And then I'm actually in Palm Springs right now, looking at another exciting deal that's going to be probably is going to be the biggest that I've ever
That's
worked
awesome,
on.
man. Yeah, you got some exciting things coming down the pipeline. Yeah, I think one other really cool thing that you mentioned was the seller finance piece. And that's like velocity of leverage for you. I mean, it's like adding to the velocity of money so significantly because you're able to negotiate both favorable terms for the seller and for yourself and really make that benefit you, whether that's like, hey, it's an interest only payment for 18 months while you get the hotel renovated and stabilized, and then you start paying down the principal. Or there's so many different levers that you can pull with seller financing, which is just absolutely incredible going forward, and definitely a huge way to set yourself up for success going forward. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And I didn't even really know about seller financing, probably 18 months ago but it really is a conversation between you and the seller about what benefits them the most and what benefits you the most. And so if you do a big down payment, we don't like that because that's more cash that we have to bring in and raise. And they actually don't always like a big cash payment and down payment because then they have to pay taxes on that. Versus a smaller down payment, they get a little bit of money, they can do what they want to do, they buy their motorcycle and they ride off in the distance, but then they get really great monthly checks, like the interest only payments. And it's funny because in residential, if you're just buying your own primary, people hear interest only debt and they're like, whoa, no way, I would never do interest only. But this is commercial. And this is saying, hey, I'm just going to give you interest only. So seller, you're actually making more money because I'm not paying any principal down. It works for me because I know my payment. I don't need the principal to be paid down because I'm doing the velocity of money strategy and improving the property. And I'm confident that I'm going to be able to improve it so much that I don't need to pay the principal down because I'm just going to refinance. I'm going to pay off the seller and then I'm going to cash out or bring cash back to me and my investors. And we're still going to cash flow. So that 18 to 36 months of interest only payments really means nothing to the overall deal structure other than it actually saves us money because we don't have to pay us every month on the interest. So yeah, mutually beneficial to
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we bought a couple of assisted living homes seller finance, and it really is just that conversation and relationship of like, hey, what are you looking for? The last one we did, they were like, hey, we need $45,000, and then we want to retire, and so we just want the cash flow. Like, okay, great. That we don't want to pay a big down payment. Similar reasons to what you said. So we ended up paying 6% down on this property, and yeah, assisted living home near Scottsdale, Arizona, 6% down, which was $45,000. And then we negotiated a much lower interest rate than what the current market was as well. So we got interest rate at 6% at a time when it was about 8.5. And they're super happy and we're even more happy. And so it was just a great way to do it. Yeah. So it's all about the relationships, which is really important, and being willing to have that conversation. And one other point to that real quick was a lot of times folks just don't understand what seller financing means and how that benefits them. And so we had a lot of conversations with them, and then we wrote this like beautiful document of, hey, here's how much money you're making in interest. Here's how much money you're saving in taxes. Here's how much you're saving by the fact that we don't need to go through a realtor. We can just work with an attorney and title. And then they saw that and they're like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Not to mention they still got their purchase price. And so it's just amazing.
I think this is really a big deal because a lot of people hear this stuff and they hear sub 2 that Pace Morby talks about and creative finance, and people don't think that there's deals out there or that deals don't cash flow. And it's like, you have to go do this stuff. And honestly, you just have to be willing to have the conversation, like you said. And so I love this. And because there's a lot, this has happened a lot, having conversations with sellers where they think they know. They're like, oh yeah, I don't want to do seller financing because I don't like it. But they actually don't know what it is or what it actually means. And the cool thing that you kind of talked about, that there's another deal that I'm really interested in, but they want their purchase price. But I'm like, okay, well, I will give you interest only payments at this price. And that means that you'll actually get more total than what you're actually asking for right now. But I can't do it at the actual price that you're asking. But over the next 18 to 24 months, you will actually make more money if you do this seller financing deal. But it's just like, they're just, some of them, they just don't want to have a conversation.
Yeah, they get so focused on that purchase price. Yeah, or hey, I'll amortize it over 40 years instead of 30 and I'll pay your purchase price. Like there's just a lot of ways to play with it. Yeah, I will send that to you. I'll send you the exact letter that we use to send to them with the number still in it. So you can take a look and see. And then if anyone listening to this wants to get that as well, just send me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram or an email to alex@physiciansproperties.com. And I'll send you that as well. Awesome. Yeah, and Kassidy, drop some knowledge bombs on here for sure, man. I'm really excited for you for this Washington hotel, what's coming in Palm Springs, and for the Solvang renovation, man. It's going to be an exciting journey. I can't wait to come out, check them out, and stay there. It's good stuff. If folks want to reach out to you, they want to know more, they want to potentially invest with you in some of these deals that are coming up, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is actually just through my Instagram page. It's at Kassidy.Warren, and that's Kassidy with a K. And you could DM me for now. I think I'll have a link to fill out, email address and all that soon here. But I will be looking for investors on all the future deals, and I want to help people make more money. I want to help transform your money into more money. I love doing these projects. I love creating experiences and helping people and building relationships with others. And if I can help your listeners do that, then
absolutely, man. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll be sure to include a link in the show notes to your Instagram as well. And man, good stuff. Got any parting shots before we wrap things up?
I just really appreciate you having me on. And just follow me on Instagram.
Sounds good, man. Awesome. Well, with that, it's been Kassidy Warren and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.